Reborn, I avoided every advance from my wealthy childhood friend, Ethan Prescott. Because I knew the poor transfer student, Iris Jones, was his destined love. In my past life, Ethan misunderstood, thinking I bullied his white moonlight, Iris. He let thugs destroy my hands, crippling my dream of becoming an artist. He watched me drown in a pool, his expression cold as he uttered, "Vivian Sinclair, you owed Iris this." After my rebirth, he appeared at my doorstep on a stormy night, drenched, his voice trembling with grievance. "Vivian, have you forgotten? You promised to draw a portrait for me every birthday." The summer air buzzed with cicadas. After gym class, Iris Jones collapsed from low blood sugar. Ethan Prescott was the first to react, rushing over and carrying her to the school nurse's office. When my best friend, Felicity Wood, told me this indignantly, the classroom fell silent. Everyone knew Ethan and I had been inseparable since kindergarten. In terms of family background and looks, we were considered a match made in heaven. Seeing my lack of reaction, Felicity grew anxious. Doesn't Ethan hate the poor transfer student? Why would he carry her himself? I quietly gazed at my unharmed hands. Yes, I thought. I used to believe that too. It wasn't until after I died that I learned we were living in a sweet romance novel titled The CEO and His Stubborn Love. The heroine was Iris Jones, the girl from the slums, and the prince who saved her was my aloof childhood friend, Ethan. For her sake, Ethan destroyed my dream of becoming a painter and watched me drown. My death, however, merely served as a catalyst for their relationship. The proud heroine finally lowered her head, crying apologies, claiming it was all because she loved him too much. She comforted the remorseful Ethan, helped him overcome his darkness, and they lived happily ever after. Back in the classroom, Ethan approached me, holding out a drink. "Vivian, your favorite 100 orange juice. Got it from the convenience store." I clenched my fists, my gaze shifting to Iris Jones standing behind him. She wore a second-hand uniform and old sneakers, her hair in a high ponytail. Yet, clutched in her hand was the box of custom-made artisan chocolates my mother had brought back from Europe. In my past life, seeing that box in Iris's hands had upset me. Ethan didn't even like sweets, yet he'd specifically asked me for that particular box. I had assumed it was for his cousin who loved snacks. I never imagined he'd give it to Iris. Felicity had stood up for me then, asking Iris if she knew the price of the chocolate. Upon hearing that the small box cost 100, Iris's eyes filled with tears as she questioned me righteously. "Vivian Sinclair, do you have any idea how many children in deprived areas can't afford school? Yet you spend money on foreign luxuries instead of donating it. I'm so disappointed in you." I had scoffed, retorting, "You think you're so noble? If you look down on my chocolate, why did you eat most of it?" With a look of cold stubbornness, she ran to the trash can, intending to make herself vomit. Ethan grabbed Iris's arm, glanced around, and commanded coldly, "Enough, Iris," trembling like a frightened quail yet affecting a posture of defiant pride, stopped her actions. How ridiculous that, blinded by our shared childhood, I never considered Ethan's words might have been directed at me. I truly was a dull, foolish idiot. 3. "I don't want it," I refused coldly. Ethan sighed and reached out to pat my head. "Are you mad I took the transfer student to the nurse? I just felt sorry for her." Iris's already pale face turned sheet white. She looked helplessly at Ethan, nearly crushing the remaining chocolates in her hand. Before I could react, the sharp-eyed Felicity spoke up. "That imported chocolate Mom Sinclair bought, how did it end up with you?" Iris paused, then, just like in the previous life, put on a stubborn expression. "Vivian, do you know what 100 means to children in the mountains? So many kids can't afford school, yet you waste it on a box of sweets instead of helping others. Do you even have a heart?" This time, Felicity hadn't mentioned the price, but Iris used the same words as before. It meant she had already figured out the chocolate's value privately. Her usual display of aloof purity was just an act to attract Ethan's attention. My face remained impassive. Iris sidled half a step towards the window, grabbing the arm of Oliver Lee, the chubby boy sitting there, and challenged me. Take this classmate, for example. How much effort does he have to put in just to study in the same classroom as you? I looked at the blushing boy and said coolly, "Oliver Lee, how did you get into our school?" He looked nervous. Seeing the impatience in my eyes, he finally stammered. "The Sinclair family established a scholarship to help students from poor families. That's how I got the chance." In other words, my family paid for it. Poor Iris grew flustered. "Oliver, I told you, rich people look down on everyone. Once people know the Sinclairs sponsor you, they'll definitely side with Vivian and bully you." In my past life, worried about hurting the pride of students from humble backgrounds, I had never mentioned my family's donations. I hadn't expected Oliver Lee to be so devoted to Iris. His grades were good, but his family was very poor. His father died young, and his mother was seriously ill. Yet, to impress Iris, he worked himself to the bone, secretly sending her gifts. When he found out Iris had fallen for Ethan, he suppressed his own pain and devised the plan to destroy my hands, plunging me into despair. I let out a self-deprecating laugh. "Oliver Lee, my family sponsors your tuition and living expenses, and we even arranged treatment for your mother. Do you think I'm qualified to eat expensive chocolate?" Oliver said nothing. But Iris's eyes welled up with tears, her face full of grievance. "Vivian, take your anger out on me. What kind of person bullies classmates?" "Oliver, stand tall." I refused to believe that someone who always gets top marks couldn't find another sponsor besides the Sinclairs. Emboldened by his goddess's support, Oliver straightened his spine and gritted his teeth. "Vivian Sinclair, a gentleman doesn't accept handouts given with contempt." Before he could finish, I snatched the bank card from his uniform pocket. "My family just bought 2 new wolf dogs. This money would be better spent on dog food than feeding an ungrateful wretch." 5 after school, I didn't wait for Ethan. Felicity was surprised. "Vivian, isn't Mr. Prescott Jr. taking you to your art class?" I lowered my eyes, saying nothing. I quietly led her to an empty, secluded classroom. Inside, Iris was sobbing, punctuated by hiccups. "Ethan, if you hate me, just say so. But I have a sense of justice. Please tell your childhood sweetheart not to humiliate me by bullying poor students." Ethan, looking intrigued, used his thumb to wipe away her tears. Then, he gripped her chin firmly and kissed her. You're so bad," but soon, the girl's slender arms wrapped around the boy's neck. Their breaths mingled intimately. Felicity clapped a hand over her mouth, nearly gasping aloud. "Holy crap," the poor girl hooked Mr. Prescott Jr. "You two grew up together. How could he betray you just like that?" Looking at my friend, who was indignant on my behalf, a warmth spread through my heart. If I was the cannon fodder in this story, Felicity was the cannon fodder's loyal sidekick. She resented the heroine for stealing my childhood friend and constantly picked fights with her. Later, she was dragged into an alley by thugs, assaulted, and killed. Leaving the classroom, I said earnestly, "Felicity, I have principles. I don't recycle things that have been sullied. From now on, don't pick fights with them. It won't do you any good." Just let it go like that? Of course not. Since I was reborn, I had to change the fate of everyone in this story. 6 the next day, I didn't wait for Ethan to walk to school together. When I reached the classroom, he placed a carton of premium milk, produced by the Prescott family's company, on my desk. "Vivian, why didn't you wait for me this morning?" I pretended not to hear and stood up to leave. But the next second, he grabbed my wrist. My gaze flickered to Iris, who was drinking milk. She deliberately showed the packaging identical to the one Ethan had given me. Ethan frowned, his voice slightly hoarse as he explained. "I was worried she'd faint from low blood sugar again. Don't misunderstand." I tried to pull away, but his grip was strong. He wouldn't let go. "Let go," Ethan seemed taken aback. I had never spoken to him in such a harsh tone. "It's just a carton of milk. I won't give her any more." Ethan sighed resignedly. It seemed he still thought I was just throwing a rich girl tantrum. Just then, Iris approached, deliberately asking, "Ethan, what's wrong between you and Vivian? Is it because you gave me milk? I can apologize." "Mind your own business." Ethan's face turned cold. But seeing her bite her lip and lower her head pitifully, A flicker of fleeting tenderness crossed his eyes. So many things I had overlooked. 7 after class, I went to the art studio on the top floor. My mother had donated money to the school and asked Principal Evans to set up this room specifically for me. Others generally couldn't enter. But later, Ethan had allowed Iris to spill my paints, tear my artwork, and kiss him passionately right in front of me here. Thinking of this, I took out a stack of well-preserved practice sketches. They depicted an 18-year-old Ethan. After I started learning to draw, he had held my hand, whining playfully. "From now on, Vivian has to draw a portrait for me every birthday." I had promised. From simple kindergarten drawings to teenage sketches. Every single one cherished. My drawing improved steadily, yet I grew further and further away from him. I tore them up, one by one, letting Ethan's features scatter into pieces. A fierce fire burned within me. A startled gasp sounded from outside the door. Iris was hiding there, watching my actions, an undeniable look of triumph in her eyes. I walked out step by step. Last time, it was right here. Iris accused me of pushing her down the stairs. That marked the beginning of the rift between Ethan and me. This time, I smiled faintly. "This isn't a place for you. Get out." Iris glanced down the stairs, then moved closer, provoking me with a smirk. "The barefoot aren't afraid of those in shoes. I hate your high and mighty attitude the most. Just because you're richer and better than me, you think you can look down on people. Believe it or not, I can use the crudest method to break you and Ethan apart." She reached out to grab me, intending to use the angle of my resistance to make the security camera capture footage of me pushing her down the stairs. As she wished, I could no longer suppress the hatred boiling inside me. I kicked Iris hard, sending her tumbling down the stairs. 8, a Chinese letter shriek echoed through the school. Iris, Ethan rushed over frantically. Iris lay sprawled on the stairs, bleeding profusely from her forehead. He quickly carried her to the nurse's office. Returning to the classroom, Ethan's eyes were cold, his tone icy. "Vivian, did you push Iris down the stairs?" A palpable hostility emanated from the boy, as if someone had harmed his most precious treasure. I lowered my head with a calm expression, then meticulously practiced drawing strokes on a piece of paper. Ethan angrily grabbed my collar. "Vivian, what's this attitude? Do you think having money gives you the right to bully people?" Suddenly, the classroom fell silent. Disbelief was etched on everyone's faces. I forcefully pushed him away, my voice frigid. "You say I did it. Do you have proof?" Ignoring the nurse's objections, Iris had Oliver Lee carry her back to the classroom to confront me. "Vivian Sinclair, I just saw you tearing up Ethan's portraits and thought it was bad luck, so I tried to talk you out of it. How could you push me down the stairs?" Iris leaned weakly against Ethan. "I remember Vivian treasures everything in her art studio. There must be security cameras nearby." In the previous life, she had used the fact that cameras record video, but not audio to frame me. No matter how I explained, Ethan remained convinced it was my fault. But this time, he immediately sent someone to check. The response came back. The camera was broken. 9 clutching her bleeding forehead and fractured leg, Iris glared at me with hatred. "Vivian, you broke it on purpose, so what if I did? Let me give you some advice. People must take responsibility for their foolish actions. If you want to slander me, you'd better consider if you're capable." Ethan interrupted me icily. Enough I believe Iris wouldn't hurt herself for no reason. His words stunned everyone present. No way, as Vivian's fiancé, Ethan is actually siding with the poor student. You can't say that. If Vivian really did it, don't you think the poor student is rather pitiful? Felicity shot me a worried glance. Previously, I would have been sad, heartbroken, but I had awakened. I would no longer be a stepping stone for the main character's relationship. Iris tilted her head back at a 45-degree angle, her face a mask of fragile beauty, striving to hold back tears. She limped to the window, her eyes full of defiance. "I can prove my innocence with my life." Hearing this, Ethan faltered for a moment. Oliver Lee, like a loyal knight, rushed forward, shielding the window with his portly frame. A small smile played on my lips. The female lead loved using this act pitiful, yet proud to gain sympathy. I wouldn't let her succeed. Ethan's deep eyes fixed on me, asking one last time, "Vivian, nobody would gamble with their life to frame someone. Just admit it, I won't pursue the matter." I found it ironic. In the previous life, he claimed to believe me. But when thugs cornered both Iris and me, he hadn't spared me a glance, grabbing her and fleeing. That rainy night in the dark alley, my fingers broken, one by one. The pain of never being able to draw again, even thinking about it, now made me breathless with agony. Ethan noticed the stiffness in my face, assumed I was unwilling to admit guilt, and softened his tone. "Vivian, Iris isn't petty. If your family compensates her with $5 million, we can let this drop." Everyone's gaze fell upon me. Expressions varied. Jealousy truly destroys a woman, and I thought Vivian Sinclair was a proper lady, incapable of such dirty tricks. I believe in Vivian's character. Let's wait and see. Just as the school administration was alerted by the commotion, I pulled a recording pen from my pocket and played Iris's words. "Vivian, the barefoot aren't afraid of those in shoes. I hate your high and mighty attitude the most. Just because you're richer and better than me, you think you can look down on people. Believe it or not, I can use the crudest method to break you and Ethan apart." Fear finally flickered across Iris's face. "Vivian, you dare scheme against me?" "No, please believe me. Everyone, she really pushed me down the stairs. They say seeing is believing and hearing is deceiving. I intended to prove them wrong." 11 Iris's plan backfired spectacularly. She failed to frame me and ended up with a broken leg. Oliver Lee became the biggest beneficiary. Every day, he rode his bicycle to the poorer district to pick up his goddess for school, even if they were met with the glares of the entire class. Knowing he had angered me, Ethan persistently sent gifts to my house as an apology. "Vivian, it was my fault. I shouldn't have doubted you. I had someone bid on your favorite master's artwork at an auction abroad. Please let me in." Each time, he was turned away at the door. The 2 new wolf dogs my family acquired barked ferociously at him. My mother, Alina, just back from a trip, couldn't bear watching. "Vivi, children shouldn't hold grudges overnight. If there's a misunderstanding, just clear it up." But images flooded my mind. Ethan, siding with Iris, conspiring with his father, Walter Prescott, to frame my family's company and seize all our assets. My mother, heartbroken by my death, soon passed away herself. No, there were things my parents needed to prepare for early. I wrapped my arms around my mother's neck. I told her everything about Ethan defending Iris and showed her the photos of them kissing. My mother's expression instantly turned cold. Thank goodness, I never agreed when Beatrice Prescott pushed for an early engagement. I also told her about Oliver Lee defending Iris. For years, my mother had devoted herself to charity, supporting single mothers battling cancer. Oliver's late grandmother used to make exceptionally delicious savory crepes. My mother frequented her stall as a child, which led to her helping the Lee family later on. Through my past life, I knew Oliver's mother, Martha Lee, had recovered long ago. But to secure more aid for her son, she feigned weakness, tricking my mother out of a considerable sum of money. "Mom," our ancestors said, "help in emergencies, not subsidize chronic poverty. Let's have Mrs. Lee get a full checkup. If she's fine, I think we can stop the financial aid." Absolutely, Oliver knew how much we helped his family, yet he dared to bully my daughter. His character is questionable. I breathed a sigh of relief. I took the opportunity to ask about interning at the family company. My mother readily agreed, praising me for growing up and becoming sensible. Suddenly, I remembered how, in my past life, she had knelt before countless deities, performing 3,000 kowtows, begging the heavens to let me live again. My nose tingled. I buried myself in my mother's warm embrace. 12 The heroine's aura was indeed powerful. While getting her injuries treated at the hospital, Iris discovered Principal Evans's young granddaughter nearly being abducted by human traffickers. Ignoring her injured leg, she fought desperately to rescue the child. Her wounds reopened. Principal Evans held an assembly, praising Iris's bravery and urging everyone to learn from her example. Her reputation took a turn for the better. Some felt sympathy. I think having ambition and wanting to climb isn't entirely bad. After all, not everyone is fortunate enough to be born wealthy. Others gossiped. If Ethan hadn't made the first move, Iris might not have had the guts to provoke Vivian. I saw them at the ice rink together, and they spent a long time in the men's restroom. Keep this quiet? I completely ignored the rumors. My focus was entirely on preparing my artwork for the upcoming competition. 13 Ethan brought a box of expensive paints, leaning close to my face. Vivian, darling, don't be angry anymore, okay? The young master of the Prescott family rarely lowered himself like this, using his handsome face to plead. There was a time when my fingertips traced his features, memorizing his eyes, nose, lips. But now I instinctively pulled back. My face showed nothing but disgust and revulsion. Ethan's expression darkened, and he grabbed my shoulder. I made one mistake, and you erase all the good I've ever done for you. I shot up from my seat, forcing him to stumble backward. Ethan Prescott, get this straight, when you were good to me, I always returned the favor twofold. Your mother gave me a necklace. My mother undoubtedly sent your family a gift of greater value in return. Your father's company faced a crisis. My father helped without a second thought. But you, what have you done? I opened my phone and projected onto the screen. In the art studio, Ethan had his arms around Iris's waist, nibbling her earlobe inch by inch. You're much better behaved, easier to handle than the Sinclair heiress. Iris, blushing furiously, reached down to unbuckle his belt and leaned in slowly. The video stopped. The entire class held its breath. Damn, Prescott's got game doing that in Vivian's studio. So gross if I were Vivian, I'd puke for 3 days straight. Ethan clenched his fists, his face pale. Vivian, do you have to blow this up? Thanks to your girlfriend, I installed a new security camera in the studio, with audio recording. Iris, terrified, hid behind him, speechless. But Ethan coldly pushed her away, his eyes filled with ice and fury. Vivian, I won't let go easily. 14 after school, Felicity insisted on taking me to a movie. Said we needed a thorough eye cleansing. Vivian, I really don't get it. Ethan has an amazing fiancé like you. How could he even look at Iris Jones, who's leagues below you in status? It wasn't hard to understand. The male and female leads were destined to be together. Even without that destiny, the thrill of the forbidden is an alluring fantasy men perpetually chase. After dying in my past life, my spirit lingered around the Prescott household. I saw Beatrice Prescott discover her husband kept a mistress, smashing antique vases in rage. Ethan had been indifferent. Mom, as long as your position as the main wife is secure, it won't affect my inheritance. The philandering nature and cold-heartedness ran deep in the men of that family, passed down through generations. Even a son wouldn't empathize with his mother. Then why did he say he won't let you go? Does he still want the alliance with your family? Has he no shame? In terms of wealth and influence, the Prescotts lagged behind the Sinclairs. Ethan couldn't bear to lose my family's support, yet he couldn't escape Iris's allure. Wanting everything often leads to losing it all. 15 the night before the competition, my art studio was vandalized. My work, the result of 3 months of hard labor, was splashed with ink, ruined into a worthless piece of paper. Coincidentally, the new security camera was broken again. The classroom instantly erupted. Everyone looked at Ethan and Iris with disgust. Someone definitely retaliated on purpose. Vivian's luck is terrible, lost her fiancé and her artwork. Ethan said he wouldn't let go. Being childhood friends with someone like that must mean she burned incense wrong in a past life, got the wrong connection. In the previous life, the main character's reputations weren't nearly this bad. I had been certain Iris did it. Ethan hadn't believed me. Even after my hands were broken, he'd sneered that it was karma for falsely accusing others. But this time, after I told my parents about Ethan's actions, my father consecutively canceled collaborations with the Prescott family, causing their stock price to plummet repeatedly. Ethan got chewed out by his father. Now, with my artwork destroyed, the students pointed fingers at Iris, my known rival. He inevitably harbored suspicions, afraid my family would retaliate further. Iris denied it. Ethan, I didn't do it. But the fall down the stairs was staged by you. Now you deny this too. Do you have proof? I've told you countless times. Vivian pushed me. Why won't you believe me? She threw herself into Ethan's arms, trying to soften his anger with kisses. Suddenly, I felt someone staring intently at my back, like a venomous snake. My body tensed. The gaze quickly vanished. 16 after my masterclass, walking through a quiet path, I sensed someone following closely behind. Just as I was about to run, a hand clamped over my mouth, and I was dragged into an alley. A thug with bleached blonde hair, Rick, Blondie, grinned menacingly before me. You Vivian Sinclair. Seeing the snake-shaped scar on his hand, terrifying memories flooded back. This was the man who had taken a tool and broken my fingers, one by one. I didn't hide the fury on my face. Dare to cross the Sinclair family? Get ready to rot in jail for life? Tough talk. So what if it's the Sinclair family? Think money lets you get away with murder? Hess, I actually laughed out loud. Oliver Lee sent you, didn't he? I just cut off his mother's funding, and he immediately destroys my artwork. I shouted loudly. Oliver Lee, you admire Iris Jones, but you stalk her like a rat in the gutter. What kind of man are you? A plump figure emerged from the shadows. Vivian, if it weren't for you, why would Iris be misunderstood? Why didn't you clarify you did it? Afraid Ethan would discover your filthy intentions, or worried you wouldn't get your high school diploma? Shut up because the funding was cut. My mom's been losing sleep. Her cancer relapsed. Heaven has eyes, I had to admit. Oliver Lee was quite intelligent. Last life, he covered his tracks perfectly when hiring the thug. I never found out while I was alive. This life, he hacked the camera again, destroyed my painting, and stayed out of it. Unfortunately, the guy was utterly blinded by infatuation. He liked Iris Jones. A few words of encouragement from her, and he lost all sense of proportion, daring to oppose me. He even intended to take me down with him. 17, just as Blondie was about to repeat his actions from my past life, bodyguards descended as if from nowhere. One kick sent him sprawling, coughing up blood. Oliver turned to flee, but he was too overweight. I stuck out my leg, tripping him. I grabbed his collar and delivered 10 hard slaps across his face. You like being a simp. I'll beat you into a hot dog. Oliver, unfit and easily winded, was pinned down by 2 other arriving bodyguards, helpless against my assault. His face instantly swelled into a grotesque mask. When Iris appeared, she saw her #1 sycophant, mouth full of blood, and gaped. Vivian, are you attacking innocent people? You dared to have him destroy my hands first, then ruin my reputation. Why shouldn't I fight back? I didn't do anything. I couldn't be bothered to explain, simply switched on the recording pen again. Iris's soft voice emerged. Oliver, I've always admired your strength of character. Born into poverty, yet striving relentlessly. But the Sinclairs are too much. They initially promised to fund you through university, then went back on their word, even stopping your mother's medication. They deserve hell. A gentleman seeks revenge. I remember you have a childhood friend who's good at fighting. If he could teach Vivian a lesson, it would be good to vent some anger. Oliver was clearly swayed. You're right, those bastards have pushed me too far. I'd be a coward not to retaliate. They discussed how to break my hands, then have Oliver's friend assault me as a reward. In my previous life, if I hadn't bitten Blondie's hand fiercely, he might have succeeded. But ultimately, with Iris's help, he escaped. This life, everyone who commits a crime should be punished. 18 Iris trembled with rage. Vivian, I've never met anyone who loves using a recording pen as much as you. I couldn't help it. I crawled back from hell, terrified of losing to the protagonist group. Fortunately, this world has police. Simply handing over the evidence could solve half the problems. She remained defiant. The recording is fake. Ethan won't believe I instigated it. Is that so? I shrugged and casually gestured in another direction. Ethan was standing not far away. From this distance, his expression was unclear, but he stood rigidly, motionless. Who knows how long he'd been listening? Iris let out a sharp scream and nearly fainted. Oliver Lee and his friend Rick Shaw, both being 18, were sent to prison. But Oliver insisted he acted alone out of revenge, not under Iris's influence. The female lead was cleared, and under Principal Evans's protection, she remained in school. 19, I doodled on a piece of paper, musing that the protagonist's halo was still too strong. Despite such a huge scandal, she remained resilient, like an unkillable cockroach, still attending classes, still able to take the college entrance exams. However, it wasn't entirely without gain. At least Ethan was no longer entangled with her. Faced with Iris's submissive act, he remained unmoved. Perhaps a man's possessiveness is twisted. He could appreciate her aloofness, tolerate her occasional tantrums, but couldn't stand her using the same coquettish act on another man. 20 Ethan came to my house with lavish gifts, proposing marriage. His mother, Beatrice Prescott, beamed. Vivian, Ethan was led astray by a vixen before, took a wrong turn. But what young man doesn't like to play around? As long as his heart is with you, that's what matters. My mother, Alina, was thoroughly displeased. My father and she were deeply in love, with no history of messy affairs. Naturally, she hoped for a good match for her daughter. Mrs. Prescott, we are both women. We should understand that a rotten cucumber is useless. Hearing the distant, cold address, Beatrice's expression stiffened. I've disciplined Ethan. He guarantees nothing like this will ever happen again. Ethan knelt before me on one knee. Vivian, it was my fault. I'll spend my life making it up to you. Please don't reject me. You even drew my portrait for my birthday this year. When I found the pieces you tore up, my heart shattered. Only then did I realize what I had lost. I let out a soft scoff. Ethan, Auntie Prescott, if Uncle Prescott's company wasn't facing another crisis, would you lower yourselves to beg for an early marriage alliance? The color drained from Beatrice's face, leaving it more mottled than a dyer's cloth. 21, Ethan looked directly at me, the smile in his eyes slowly chilling. Vivian, does it matter what I do? You'll never forgive me, will you? Utterly ridiculous. Who would continue to love someone who had hurt them? If he had endured a life of being bullied and humiliated, he would be 100 times more ruthless than me. After seeing the Prescotts out, my mother hugged me, relieved. Vivi, I'd rather have you happily be a mama's girl forever than marry scum. She looked at me, her eyes filled with maternal tenderness. There's truly no one like Mom in the world, but before I could act spoiled, my mother clutched her chest, her eyes suddenly shutting, and collapsed. Terrified, I frantically called emergency services. Emerging from the ICU, my mother remained in a deep coma. The doctors couldn't find any reason. I trembled uncontrollably with fear. That night, I had a dream. I dreamt of my past life after my death. My mother knelt before the gods, making a pact with heaven. I saw her performing 3,000 kowtows, one step at a time, praying for the Buddha beads that would bring me back. She was willing to trade her own life for my chance to live again. My dearest girl, her voice echoed, life's bitterness means love departs and rain must fall. Life's sweetness means, no matter how far you roam, always remember the way home. Ignoring the pouring rain, I ran to the most revered Serenity Temple to pray. Rain mingled with tears, soaking my body. After a long time, an elderly monk with a white beard emerged. Child, defying fate requires a price, unless you can turn heaven and earth. 22, I pondered the master's words intensely. Turn heaven and earth. Did it mean changing everyone's ending? Right now, the heroine's reputation was ruined, yet she was still attending classes normally, able to take the college entrance exams. The Prescott family had even found new partners, temporarily weathering the crisis. Even the cannon fodder Oliver Lee and the thug who killed me in my past life were merely imprisoned for attempted harm. Returning home, I saw my father, Arthur, who had rushed back from abroad, sitting devastated on the sofa. He and my mother were childhood sweethearts who had supported each other steadfastly, always faithful. With Mom unconscious, Dad had no heart for business matters. I thought of my past life, how Walter Prescott used their brotherly bond to lure my father into a trap, bankrupting us. The Prescotts then swooped in, acquiring the Sinclair family's prime assets, their own value soaring. This laid the foundation for Ethan to become a city's most famously wife-fearing tycoon. I went over and took my father's hand. "Dad, I want to start working at the company sooner." "Vivi, your priority right now is your studies." "No," I overheard Uncle Prescott planning to swallow our company. "Impossible, we grew up together, practically shared pants, I've helped him countless times, he wouldn't betray that trust." I directly presented the evidence of Ethan's betrayal. Even the best brothers value their own sons more. Ethan hurt me many times. If he dislikes me, his father certainly feels the same. My father doted on his daughter and was devoted to his wife. Hearing this filled him with anger and indignation. I went to the company with Dad. Suddenly, I remembered the Prosperity Stone decoration in the CEO's office. It was a gift from Walter Prescott, who specifically instructed Dad not to move it, claiming it would affect the company's feng shui. I pretended to accidentally knock it over. Inside, startlingly, was a listening device. My father was stunned, but he was a clever man. To avoid alerting Walter, he didn't remove the bug. Instead, he used it to feed Walter false information. Humans are strange creatures. They fear their friends' suffering, yet also fear them succeeding wildly. From my past life, I knew Walter had long envied my father's greater success. No matter, greed clouds judgment. Dad deliberately set a trap, making Walter believe a huge opportunity was ripe for the taking. Once Walter was hooked, he discovered his attempt to gain an advantage had backfired spectacularly, costing him dearly. 23, half of the Prescott family's wealth evaporated. I didn't dare relax. Using memories from my time as a ghost lingering near Ethan, I told my father about upcoming financial events one by one. He had lost a lot of weight recently, occasionally coughing up blood, but refused to see a doctor. Now, listening intently, his brow furrowed, and he couldn't suppress a large cough spitting blood. "Vivian, how could you know these things?" Terrified, I wiped the blood away for him, took a deep breath, and slowly confessed. "Dad, you might not believe this, but I've been reborn." I told him the important parts of what happened in my previous life. Mom swore her life away, praying to the heavens for me to live again. And you stood behind her, vowing to protect Mom and me, funding the restoration of Buddhist statues, willing to sacrifice 30 years of your own life so we could live well. When I was first reborn, I didn't have this memory. It wasn't until Mom fell into a coma and I had the nightmare that I remembered everything my parents did for me. They paid the price of life itself, driven by love. Seeing the look of dawning realization on Dad's face, utterly fearless of death, I grew scared. "Dad, I don't want to lose you and Mom." "Vivi, as long as you can live." Even if I had to do it again, Dad would make the same choice. This was the deepest love of parents. Higher than mountains, deeper than seas, like a bright beacon, never extinguished. I held back my tears and relayed the Master's words. Perhaps, when we defy fate, there might be a chance for things to turn around. Dad deeply agreed. He no longer doubted my predictions about future financial events. He began restructuring the business strategy, planning a decisive counterattack against the Prescott family. 24, but just as everything was proceeding smoothly, Ethan Prescott was reborn too. He was sharp. Noticing the Prescotts hadn't risen by stepping on the Sinclairs as they did in the last life, and that I no longer clung to him as before, he quickly deduced he wasn't the only one reborn. I was captured. Ethan's eyes no longer held their youthful clarity. They carried the depth of someone seasoned by years in the business world. "Vivian, your family's recent market foresight. That was you revealing things, wasn't it? The market is vast. Why focus solely on destroying the Prescotts?" He gripped my chin, his eyes filled with coldness. I remained fearless. The Sinclair family had launched successive attacks against the Prescotts, causing them to lose major contracts one after another. When they sought help, we kicked them while they were down. Repeating exactly what the Prescotts had done to the Sinclairs in the previous life, tooth for tooth. 25, Ethan had returned a little too late. No one dared guarantee loans for the Prescotts. The banks were about to foreclose on their mortgaged properties. A sharp dagger pressed against my neck. Vivian, if I kill you, everything can go back to the way it was. Really? Like how you ignored my crippled hands and watched me drown in the pool last time just to strike at my parents? A flicker of guilt crossed his eyes, but only for an instant. Ethan retorted defensively, "You bullied Iris first. I was just standing up for her." "Give it up, Ethan. I spent 7 years as a ghost by your side. I witnessed your marriage to Iris Jones, saw you keep mistresses, watched her descend into hysterical madness. The person you love most is yourself. Why do fairy tales end with the prince and princess living happily ever after? Because hearts are fickle. For those who cannot remain true, marriage is merely the graveyard of love." Ethan gave a wretched laugh. "So what? Iris Jones is just dependent on me. Women should be obedient. So, your initial kindness towards me, was it because the Prescotts had to rely on the Sinclairs?" He paused. "I did have genuine feelings for you. A little, but not much. Easily discarded when his own interests were at stake." Ethan looked at me with pity. "It's useless talking about this now. I am the chosen male lead. Once everything is back on track, the Prescotts will rise again." I smiled nonchalantly. "Since I was reborn, did you really think I'd be so careless as to let you easily capture me and bring me to this secret hideout?" I loved sketching in the woods. This small cave was where Ethan and I used to play as children. He narrowed his eyes. Suddenly remembering something, he glanced at his phone, his expression turning to horror. 26, an unprecedented earthquake ripped through the city. It struck shortly after my death in the previous life. Ethan, seeking solace, had taken Iris abroad. The protagonist's halo allowed them to escape the horrific experience. But this time, they weren't so lucky. My bodyguards appeared, kicking Ethan deeper into the cave. At 00:00:00 precisely, the earthquake arrived on schedule. Apart from those destined to die, I had informed my father beforehand. Using evidence provided by the Sinclair family's research department, he alerted the relevant authorities, issuing warnings to the public. Ethan was struck by falling rocks, suffering severe internal injuries. Taken to the hospital, he experienced multiple organ failure. Iris Jones, having just finished her college entrance exams, was at home when a recently installed light fixture fell, hitting her. She bled to death. 27 outside the intensive care unit, I waited anxiously. A doctor emerged, beaming. "Mrs. Sinclair's condition has improved significantly. We believe she'll regain consciousness very soon." I walked to the room where Ethan lay, clinging to his last breath. He was swathed in bandages, resembling a grotesque mummy. "Vivian, we were childhood friends. Must you be so ruthless?" If fate only allowed one protagonist, I wanted it to be me. Because my life was bought with my parents' very lives and lifespans, I would not allow anyone to profane that sacrifice. Ethan's parents appeared, their faces pale and drawn. Bankruptcy left them unable to fend for themselves. Faced with their son's astronomical medical bills, they chose to discontinue treatment. The same role parents. Some sacrifice everything, others prioritize self-preservation. As the heart monitor flatlined with a single beep, Beatrice Prescott threw herself onto her son's body, letting out heart-wrenching sobs. Seeing her husband less grief-stricken than herself, she lunged at him, attacking. "You think having a child with your mistress means you can retire peacefully. Let me tell you, without my son, I have nothing left to lose." Driven mad, Beatrice went to the mistress's house and set it on fire. The mistress and her child perished in the flames. Beatrice was imprisoned. Walter Prescott, having lost everything, completely broke down. The Prescott family, who had used the Sinclairs as stepping stones in the last life, was utterly destroyed. 28 that evening, I heard an electronic voice. The cannon fodder female side character in this book has successfully defied fate. Henceforth, All success, wealth, and status originally possessed by the protagonists will be inherited by the single cannon fodder female side character, doubled. As compensation, the parents of the cannon fodder female side character will have their lifespans extended by 50 years. The voice faded quickly. I eagerly took my parents back to the hospital for another checkup. All results were excellent. I quietly sighed with relief. My mother grumbled playfully, "Vivi, you've dragged me to the hospital 10 times this month already. Can we please stop? I'm practically pickled in disinfectant." My father, knowing the truth, beamed. "It's our daughter's heartfelt concern." My phone buzzed with a message. My entry for the art competition had won first prize. The painting Oliver destroyed was merely a replica. The real artwork had already been submitted. Oliver Lee and Rick Shaw were severely injured in the earthquake, losing limbs. Their lives ahead would be incredibly difficult, but I had no time to dwell on insignificant people. I joined my parents in admiring the painting. A newborn baby gazed lovingly at her parents, filled with pure love and dependence. "Vivi's painting is wonderful. Of course, our daughter is the best in the world." Hearing my parents' praise, a gentle curve formed on my lips. Whether I made them proud or not, they cherished me as their treasure. Love is mutual. My parents unconditionally forged strong armor for their daughter, and their loving daughter was willing to forever be her parents' most reliable bulletproof vest. The winter sun shone warmly. Our family of 3 huddled together, having crossed the freezing wilderness, never looking back. End of the first story. Subscribe to my channel if you like my stories. Don't miss the second exciting story. Story 2. The day I gave birth, a barrage of comments suddenly appeared before my eyes. The protagonist is so naive, doesn't even know her best friend swapped her baby. Seriously naive. Oblivious that her best friend and husband have been hooking up for ages. Hey, if she found out early, how could she raise the love child of her best friend and husband? How could she be murdered by that family of 3 later, only to be reborn seeking revenge? It's a power fantasy story. Just switch off your brain and enjoy. That explained why my best friend, Chloe Chandler, insisted on taking out a loan just to check into the same private hospital as me. Why she scheduled her C-section early just to give birth on the same day. I immediately swapped the babies back secretly. Wait, why isn't the protagonist following the script? "One Irene," Chloe began, gazing lovingly at the baby in my arms, her words laced with hidden meaning. "Isn't it fate? We both had girls, but yours is so well-behaved and fair-skinned. Not like the one I popped out, all ugly and dark." Clearly here to cause trouble, when she glanced at the wailing infant beside her own bed, however, her eyes filled with disgust. I pretended to be too exhausted to reply, but inwardly I was scoffing. If it weren't for the magical narrative feeds warning, I might never have known that Chloe, after giving birth to my husband Lucas Holt's bastard child, had secretly swapped her with my daughter. Luckily, I'd managed to switch them back when no one was looking. Since she dared to scheme against me, expecting me to raise her child like a nanny, she'd better be prepared to reap what she sowed, seeing me grit my teeth through the weakness and discomfort to breastfeed the baby. A satisfied look flashed in her eyes. Breastfeeding is best. The baby will grow up healthier and smarter. I glanced coolly at the infant beside her, thin as a newborn kitten, and asked, "Aren't you going to feed yours? She's been crying for a while. Probably hungry." "I don't have the energy for that. I haven't even recovered myself." Chloe waved her hand dismissively, frowning. "Girls aren't valuable. I'll just have the nurse give her some formula later." Her face showed no maternal affection, only clear annoyance and indifference. An intense rage involuntarily surged within me. She thought that was my child, hence the disdain and belittlement. I couldn't bear to imagine the cruel and heartless treatment my own daughter would have suffered had I remained oblivious. Taking a deep breath, I suppressed my emotions, pretended not to notice the flicker of provocation and triumph in her eyes, and gave a subtle, knowing smile. She still thought her plan was flawless, utterly ridiculous. Her own child was truly unlucky to have such a foolish, selfish mother. I turned away, closing my eyes, blocking her heated gaze directed at my baby. That evening, Lucas rushed to the hospital after work, his face etched with concern as he asked if I was feeling unwell anywhere. I didn't miss the fleeting glance exchanged between him and Chloe. It just made me sick. If he claimed he had nothing to do with the baby swap, I wouldn't believe him for a second. They probably plotted this together long ago. I'd married Lucas thinking he seemed dependable, but it turned out the supposedly honest types could be just as unreliable, but it didn't matter. A husband could be discarded. The deceit and hurt I had suffered, however, had to be repaid. Bit by bit I shook my head, using the excuse of needing to feed the baby to send Lucas away. Out of sight, out of mind. After the baby fell asleep, Lucas handed me a cup of hot milk. "You've worked hard, wife. Get some rest. Let the nurses watch the baby." I smiled faintly and took the cup. Just as I was about to drink, the narrative feed reappeared. Although the protagonist has messed up the script, the scumbag is being suspiciously attentive. According to tropes, the milk is definitely spiked. My hand trembled slightly. Before deep night even fell, Lucas eagerly climbed into Chloe's bed. "You rascal," Chloe pouted, leaning into his embrace. "You didn't say a word to me all day. I thought you'd forgotten about me." "Nonsense, I was just trying to be discreet, you know. Didn't want that hag catching on." Because their beds faced each other, I saw everything through slitted eyes. I clenched the blanket, my chest heaving with anger. This scumbag and this bitch, just as I suspected, they'd been hooking up for ages. Nice talk. "Aren't you afraid she'll see you now?" Chloe's eyes were sultry, her expression teasing. "You know perfectly well I put strong sleeping pills in her milk." Lucas chuckled, his hand sliding onto her thigh, caressing it suggestively. What followed was a disgusting scene. The narrative feed exploded. "WTF, WTF, this isn't the bus to kindergarten. Let me off, beep, senior citizen discount gross. Who wants to watch this scumbag and bitch getting it on? Where's the admin? Ban them already, thankfully." Chloe had just given birth and hadn't fully recovered. They only kissed breathlessly for a while before reluctantly stopping. Suppressing my nausea, I quietly retrieved my phone from under the covers. It had finished recording the video and turned over, avoiding the sight of their revolting faces. Thank goodness for the narrative feed's warning. I hadn't drunk the milk. I'd poured it down the sink in the bathroom while he wasn't looking. Otherwise, I wouldn't have captured such damning evidence over the next month. I had no time to dwell on their nauseatingly clingy moments, except to add them to my growing collection of evidence for future exposure. My entire focus was on the baby. I named her Pearl. When Chloe heard this, her eyes darted around, and she carelessly named her own baby Willow. "What's so precious about a girl? She's lucky to even get a name," Chloe gloated, thinking I was still in the dark. But the more she mistreated Willow, the more grateful I was for swapping the babies back, and the deeper my hatred for her grew. The narrative feed chimed in again. How dare she look down on girls? Wasn't she born from one? Protagonist, hurry up and slap this bitch. Silly slapping isn't enough. This type loves money. Scamming her would be way more satisfying. My eyes glinted. A good idea. Soon enough, the opportunity to scam her presented itself. This private hospital was expensive. Chloe had taken out a loan to stay here with me. At the time, she'd persuaded me to choose a semi-private room, saying the money saved could be spent on the baby. I'd agreed then, but now I realized the shared room was just to make it easier for her to make the swap. Still, staying together had one advantage. I knew exactly what she was up to. Everything was under my control, and I planned to exploit a common female weakness: jealousy. One day, a nurse took me for postpartum treatment, and Chloe happened to see us from the end of the hallway. When I returned, she asked casually, feigning indifference, "Irene, where did you just go?" I deliberately flaunted, "I had a one-on-one premium treatment. Honestly, the therapist was so professional. I feel so much better afterwards." "What's the point? Isn't that just a waste of money?" Chloe scoffed slightly. "You wouldn't understand," I began, launching into my prepared speech. "Childbirth takes a huge toll on a woman's body. If you don't repair the damage promptly, not only will you lose your figure, but you can also have issues like postpartum incontinence. Sigh, what man would want to touch you with ugly scars like that on your body? You can't possibly start sleeping in separate rooms at such a young age, right? As expected, Chloe was tempted but still hesitant. I patted her shoulder, speaking earnestly. Our bodies are our capital. We women really need to look after ourselves more. She was finally convinced, gritting her teeth. You have a point. Fine, I'll get one too. I raised an eyebrow. I remember you took out a loan just to get into this hospital. Do you even have the money? By the way, when is your husband coming back from abroad? Why hasn't he sent you any money? I asked this deliberately. A flicker of guilt crossed Chloe's face. My husband's busy, can't come back yet. I can manage on my own. It's just money, right? Worst case, I'll take out another loan. She fiddled with her phone and, under my pointed encouragement, selected the most expensive package. The narrative feed erupted in cheers. Well done, protagonist scam the bitch first, then the scumbag. Don't let either escape watching her pained expression as she confirmed the payment. I curved my lips, hiding the coldness in my eyes. I knew exactly how much money Lucas had. Since Chloe had given birth to a daughter, he wouldn't willingly cough up too much cash. Would these 2 loans become the final straw that broke their backs? I'd wait and see. 3 under my devoted care, Pearl grew plumper and fairer by the day, while Willow became increasingly thin and bony. Perhaps it was maternal instinct, but several times I couldn't stop myself from urging Chloe to pay at least some attention to her own child. But she wouldn't listen, just waved her hand dismissively. Everyone has their own fate. Since she ended up in my belly, if she can't survive, there's nothing to be done. Besides, her quietness irritates me. Compared to her, I much prefer your little Pearl. I nearly lost control of my anger, retorting coldly, You don't breastfeed her, you only give her that formula. She's already so thin, how would she have the strength to make noise? What's that got to do with me? I gave her life. If she wants to live, she should fight for it herself, all right. Stop worrying about it. I think Pearl looks hungry. Why don't you feed her again? Chloe cut me off impatiently, her entire focus on Pearl. I closed my eyes, forcing down my emotions, telling myself repeatedly not to meddle, not to cause trouble for myself. But when Willow had to be sent to an incubator for observation due to malnutrition, and Chloe flatly refused upon hearing about the extra cost, I finally exploded. That child came from your body. If you didn't intend to be responsible for her, why did you bring her into this world just to suffer? Sometimes, I really don't get it. You dote on Pearl so much. How can you be so different towards your own daughter? We're both mothers. I can't just stand by and watch Willow fade away like this if push comes to shove. Give me your husband's number. I want to ask him exactly what he's thinking. Predictably, Chloe's face changed drastically at my words. After a long pause, she forced a smile. Why are you getting so worked up? I was just thinking my husband's working hard out of town, and it's not easy. If Willow could pull through on her own, we could save the money, right? Seems the girl isn't strong enough. I'll go talk to the nurse right now. She didn't address my question about her favoring Pearl over her own daughter. Instead, she scurried out the door guiltily. The narrative feed popped up. Caring so much about the mistress's kid. The protagonist is too much of a saint. I'm out. The blame lies with the culprits. Willow is innocent. If the protagonist just let the bitch harm her without intervening, I'd find her too cold-blooded. Love and peace, guys. This works out well, doesn't it? Willow gets treatment, and we get to scam the plastic friend out of more money. Win-win, saint or not, it didn't matter. I just didn't want to be cold-blooded. Thankfully, the outcome wasn't terrible. Willow went into the incubator, and her condition finally stabilized. Regardless, the child was indeed innocent and shouldn't be caught in the adult's mess. This was the most I could do for Willow. It wasn't until near the end of my postpartum recovery period, when I no longer needed round-the-clock company, that my mother-in-law, Martha Holt, arrived from back home. Her excuse was that she herself wasn't well and didn't want to burden us, but the narrative feed exposed her. Nonsense. She just prefers grandsons and didn't want to look after a worthless girl. The old hag said she wished the money-losing burden would just die. I blinked, observing her. Sure enough, her voice was booming, her complexion ruddy. Where was the slightest sign of illness? It was clearly just an excuse to avoid taking care of me, afraid of the work involved. Irene, we both gave birth, but why are you so whiny? Still in the hospital after more than a month back in my day, we'd be working in the fields even while pregnant. Martha had never liked me and started criticizing me the moment she arrived. Chloe, on the other hand, was incredibly attentive to her, serving tea and water, offering fruit, charming Martha until she was beaming, which only made Martha glare at me with even more disapproval. If I hadn't known about their scheming, I might genuinely have been hurt and stressed by this. But knowing the truth, I felt no such psychological burden. Irene, Mom came all this way, couldn't you at least offer her the bed to rest? Have some common sense. Even little Chloe here is more considerate than you. Martha pulled a long face, her tone sharp. Yes, Irene, Chloe chimed in. Older people aren't as strong as us young folks. Auntie must be tired from the journey. As her daughter-in-law, you should be considerate. Asking a woman who just gave birth to give up her bed. Her face is thicker than this mattress. Playing the moral blackmail card, huh? Don't back down. Protagonist, if you have no morals for them, they can't blackmail you. Ooh, look at the mistress sucking up to the potential mother-in-law already. You haven't gotten the promotion yet, dear Tusk, so generous with other people's resources. If you're so filial, you give up the bed they're trying to manipulate you. Protagonist, quick, reverse psychology, turn it back on them for good idea. My eyes narrowed. Smiling slightly, I met their challenging expressions and launched my counter-attack. Mom, transportation is so advanced nowadays. How tiring could one trip be? I, on the other hand, just had a baby. The incision on my stomach is still healing. I really can't get up. As an elder, I'm sure you wouldn't hold it against me. First, I placed Martha on a moral pedestal she couldn't argue against, then turned my gaze to Chloe. Besides, Chloe has seen how hard it is for me to feed the baby. She might not care much about her own child, but I can't be like that. You two seem to get along so well. Chloe, Mom is practically like an elder to you two. Why don't you give her your bed? At these words, Chloe's smile froze instantly. What's wrong? Weren't you just saying we should be considerate of the elderly? We're best friends. My mom can be your mom too. You wouldn't possibly let your mom just stand there, would you? I need to feed Pearl now. I really can't manage anything else. Chloe, I'll leave Mom in your care. The narrative feed was flooded with 666s and applause emojis. I drew the curtain, watching their furious yet helpless expressions, feeling immensely satisfied. Chloe's words had sounded nice, but seeing that I wouldn't budge and had thrown the problem back at her, she had no choice but to let Martha rest on her bed. Martha didn't stand on ceremony, plopping down and sleeping soundly until evening. When I got up to use the bathroom, Chloe was still curled up in a chair, listening to Martha's earth-shattering snores, looking utterly miserable. She only seemed relieved when Lucas arrived from work. Martha, still holding a grudge about the bed, immediately started badmouthing me loudly in front of Lucas. Level 1 alert attack of the old green tea quick. Protagonist use her own tactics against her out green tea, the green tea. I took the narrative feed's advice to heart. When my husband looked over with a reproachful expression, I spoke even louder than Martha, looking even more aggrieved. It was Mom praising Chloe for this, and that you know how sensitive I am. I was so hurt I hid under the covers crying for ages. I just gave birth. Even the nurses say I can't handle big emotional swings. Husband, don't you have any sympathy for me at all? Luckily, I have such a good friend in Chloe. She managed to cheer Mom up, which put my mind at ease. You should hurry up and thank her, shouldn't you? My words were logical and irrefutable. No one could find fault. Martha's face darkened further, and Chloe looked like she'd swallowed a fly, yet had no outlet for her frustration. In the end, Lucas had to step in and smooth things over, temporarily sending Martha home. Chloe bottled up her resentment until later that night, after I had presumably drunk the spiked milk and fallen asleep. Only then did she vent without restraint. Your mom bullies me, And your wife bullies me too. Who am I doing all this hard work for? She cried prettily, and Lucas quickly pulled her into his arms to comfort her. It's my fault. I let you suffer. Don't worry, as soon as I get my hands on that house in Irene's name, I'll ditch her immediately. Besides, doesn't our little Pearl still need her care right now? Babies are hardest to handle at this stage. I can't bear to see you work so hard. Just endure it a little longer for our future. HMPH, that's more like it. Irene made me put up with so much, and she even forced me to send that worthless brat to the incubator when the time comes. I'll humiliate her ruthlessly. Chloe smiled through her tears. They then started talking about having a son, and as they talked, their hands started wandering again. Holy crap, Skip, I need to go wash my eyes regarding the actions of these two. If I had initially felt anger and disappointment, I was now completely numb. My sole focus was giving them a lesson they would never forget. No matter how wonderful their plans seemed, they were nothing but a pipe dream. As for the house in my name, I already had a plan for that too. I was just waiting for the right moment for them to get hoisted by their own petard, with the help of the narrative feed. I believed that moment wasn't far off. 5 after some more groping and kissing, they finally settled down. No, I really can't swallow this. Irene has to pay, Chloe suddenly spat out, her voice filled with unconcealed hatred. Don't worry, I got sick of her long ago. Otherwise, where would you fit in? Lucas replied lazily, eyes half closed, readily agreeing. They acted lovey-dovey as if no one else existed. Meanwhile, a chill went through me. I hated that after years of marriage, Lucas could be so heartless towards me, yet I was also relieved I'd discovered the truth early enough to protect myself. Otherwise, my daughter and I would both be destroyed by this despicable pair. The next morning, Martha uncharacteristically arrived at the hospital with nourishing soup for me. I simmered this soup for over 2 hours. You have to drink every last drop. Though her words were solicitous, the calculation in her eyes was blatant. The narrative feed promptly warned. Protagonist, don't drink it. The soup is drugged. This mother-son duo, and the mistress have teamed up. They want to make you infertile. My expression turned cold. Then, a plan forming, I forced a smile at Martha. Okay, Mom. Let the soup cool a bit. I'll drink it when I get back. Could you keep an eye on Pearl for me? The nurse just took her. Martha, completely unsuspecting that I knew their plan, nodded without any sign of suspicion. I took the opportunity to get out of bed and swap the soup with the one the nurse had just delivered for Chloe as part of her postpartum meal. The 2 soups looked similar enough. The difference was unnoticeable. Returning to the room, I put on a deliberate show. Thank you, Mom, for thinking of me after drinking this soup. I'll definitely recover faster and give you a big, healthy grandson. I feigned delight, then pretended I was about to pour some for Chloe. You've been in the hospital so long and your family hasn't visited. You must miss the taste of home, right? Here, let's share this soup. Chloe's face paled and she frantically waved her hands. No, Auntie made this specially for you. How could I possibly drink it? I have the soup the nurse brought. I'll just drink this. Afraid I'd insist on pouring it for her, she quickly picked up the bowl in front of her and downed it in one go. Then she added, I have a small appetite. I'm already full. You should keep this soup for yourself. I nodded and, under their expectant gazes, drank my safe soup clean. Undisguised joy spread across Martha's face. She let out a huge sigh of relief and didn't say much more to me. Instead, she turned and chatted with Chloe until evening. The entire conversation revolved around how boys were definitely better than girls. They chatted enthusiastically. Listening nearby, I found it utterly ironic. When they finally learned the truth, I wondered who, besides me, would still be able to smile on the day of discharge. Just as I was wondering how to monitor their movements going forward, Chloe suddenly proposed moving into my house. Irene, you know my husband is working out of town and can't come back to take care of us. We're best friends. You wouldn't want anything bad to happen to me, right? With an extra person at home, we can look out for each other if something comes up. What do you think? Her suggestion actually suited my plans perfectly, but I worried agreeing too quickly would arouse suspicion, so I feigned hesitation. Lucas quickly stepped in to persuade me. Wife, Mom's getting older. She only came this time to see her granddaughter and probably won't stay long. There's plenty of room at home anyway. Let Chloe stay. She can help with chores to cover her rent, and it'll make things easier for you. Only then did I reluctantly nod, adding one condition. I wanted to go back to work. 6 What? You want to go back to work? Wife, isn't it too soon? You could rest longer. Besides, Mom is still at home. What if? Lucas was first surprised, then frowned, clearly rejecting the idea. I clenched my fists, desperately resisting the urge to slap him. Men's words truly are deceitful lies. He made it sound nice, but the truth was he feared losing control over me if I had financial independence after returning to work. At the same time, he didn't want Chloe to have to care for his mother. He just wanted me to be the stay-at-home nanny. But once I'd made up my mind, how could I possibly give up so easily? Especially now that I had a clear leverage point. Why not? Chloe dotes on Pearl so much. What are you worried about? With 2 extra mouths to feed out of nowhere, are we supposed to live on air? The baby is still young and needs money spent on her. The salary I earn can at least buy Pearl some good formula. But Mom, I've thought about Mom too. She can take care of herself just fine. Chloe just needs to do housework and look after the baby, which is actually much easier than working. Plus, they get along well, so she won't be too lonely. You know Mom doesn't like me. If the 2 of us were left alone together, the house would probably erupt. Lucas came up with various reasons to refuse, but with the narrative feed's implicit guidance, I countered each one logically. Seeing us at an impasse, Chloe hastily intervened to smooth things over. All right, since Irene has her own ideas, you should support her. Pearl is still little. She can't drink that cheap formula, or it'll affect her development. She assumed I wanted to work for Pearl's sake, so she kept nudging Lucas. Defeated, he finally had to agree. Chloe, I'll be leaving early and coming back late from now on. I'm leaving the house in your hands. Don't worry, she agreed readily, adopting the air of the lady of the house. Little did she know, given my mother-in-law's nature, her nightmare was just beginning. After returning home, I waited until they were out and secretly installed pinhole cameras in various corners of the house. Predictably, in the following days, Chloe neglected Willow and focused solely on Pearl. Martha was the first to object. Zio Yan, a girl isn't worth anything. Why waste your energy? Better to build up your health and give me a grandson soon, so I can finally retire and be taken care of. Auntie, Pearl came from my body, how could I not dote on her? And having a son has to wait until Lucas divorces Irene. Otherwise, wouldn't my child be illegitimate? Chloe's expression turned ugly. I knew she was already struggling to tolerate Martha due to issues like personal hygiene. Now, with Martha disparaging the daughter she bore, her anger naturally flared. What's the rush? We haven't gotten the house, yet you're diligent and capable. Lucas and I both approve of you. Marriage is just a matter of time, Martha said, crossing her legs while watching TV and spitting sunflower seed shells onto the floor. Chloe couldn't take it anymore. She threw the broom down and stormed off to call Lucas and complain. I watched everything unfold through the cameras, but even when I returned home that evening, Chloe's eyes were still red. I knew why. Lucas. After years of marriage, I knew him too well. He hated confrontation and always tried to smooth things over. Now that he was sure Chloe was devoted to him, he was no longer as gentle and accommodating as he had been initially. Unfortunately for Chloe, she didn't understand this yet. Even if she did, it would be too late. 7 The workplace is undoubtedly harsh for women who have just given birth. Fortunately, after relentless effort, I managed to find a job related to my profession. Watching my bank account balance gradually increase finally gave me the real confidence I needed to move on to the next phase of my plan. One day, Lucas came home. Just as he was about to start flirting with Chloe as usual, he noticed me sitting there with another person, quickly composed himself, and asked awkwardly, "Back early today. Is this your friend?" "Yes, this is Sky Ashwood. I brought her back for something important related to Pearl. Here's the situation." Sky has a friend who works at City Hall and knows some inside information about upcoming demolitions. She's in real estate sales and has a property she needs to sell quickly because the owner urgently needs cash. The price is very low. Sky says the house is within the demolition zone. I was thinking we could buy it and put it in Pearl's name. It would be a good security for her future. I laid it all out. Lucas's first reaction was disbelief. Why would such a good opportunity fall into our laps? Besides, we're tight on money right now. Where would we get the funds for a second house? That's exactly why Sky only told me. She's afraid too many people knowing would make the house highly sought after. As for the money, I've thought about it too. No mother would hesitate to provide for her child. I'm planning to mortgage the house we live in. We can pay it off once the demolition compensation comes through. I had anticipated his reaction, so I had Sky thoroughly prepared for her role. She was naturally a good talker, being in sales. Her explanation was so smooth that if I hadn't known the truth beforehand, even I might have believed 80 of it. Lucas still looked skeptical, but it didn't matter. Chloe was almost completely convinced and believed the story implicitly. I didn't need to say another word. Her pillow talk would do the work for me. After seeing Sky out, I found a coffee shop, pulled up the surveillance feed on my phone, and put in my earbuds to listen to the conversation back home. I think that house sounds great and we can put it in our daughter's name. What a fantastic opportunity. Plus, Irene said she'd mortgage her house. So even if something goes wrong, she's the one who has to repay the debt. Even when you divorce her, you'll still get half of the marital assets. What are you hesitating for? Chloe was anxious, constantly persuading him, afraid they'd miss out on securing Pearl's future. Lucas sighed. Of course, I know it's a good deal, but the main issue is we don't have enough money. Besides Irene's house, we still need to come up with at least $50,000. That's basically all my savings. I have to be cautious. Does Irene know you have that much money? Why would I ever let her know? Then I have a brilliant idea, just tell her the money is borrowed. Since it's being used to buy property, it counts as joint marital debt. When you divorce, she'll absolutely have to pay half, $25,000. Then we'll have both the property and kept the money, right? That's actually a great idea. Lucas's eyes lit up, and he praised her repeatedly for being clever. Listening to the whole thing, I slowly sipped my coffee, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Their scheming was certainly ambitious, but whether their wishes would come true ultimately depended on me. Every time they tried something, the narrative feed always popped up to warn me. I wasn't afraid of any other tricks they might pull. I was already in an invincible position. Soon, with Sky's cooperation, Lucas went to view the property and was very satisfied. After discussing it, he readily produced $50,000, claiming it was borrowed, while I took my property deed and made a show of going to the bank. The plan was to sign the contract as soon as the loan was approved to avoid being beaten to it by another buyer. However, I secretly added laxatives to their dinner. I avoided it myself, using the excuse of eating at work. So, just before they were supposed to leave for the official signing, Lucas and Chloe were practically collapsing from dehydration. Maybe I should go sign, Chloe urged weakly. Sky mentioned the other day there was another interested buyer, but they were hesitating. We need to act fast. Why don't I go to the hospital with Chloe first? Let's all go sign together later. If anything comes up, we can discuss it together. Lucas frowned, instinctively disagreeing. I had my response ready. Husband, are you doubting me? This house was an inheritance from my parents. I agreed to mortgage it without hesitation. Wasn't it all for the child? Besides, Pearl is still at home. Do you really think I'd run off with the money? I feigned anger. Lucas looked pale, his stomach churning. He finally clutched his belly and ran to the toilet, telling me to come back quickly. The moment I walked out the door with the bank card, I almost burst out laughing. All my planning had paid off. I transferred the money to another account as quickly as possible, then collected the forged receipt and contract from Sky and treated myself to a hearty meal at a restaurant. Ever since Pearl was born, I'd been so busy plotting against them that I hadn't had a moment to sit down and eat properly. Now that the plan was nearing its perfect conclusion, I absolutely had to treat myself. I ordered a table full of food and savored it while enjoying the dramatic scenes unfolding on the surveillance feed. Chloe lay weakly on the master bed, but her face radiated undisguised joy. That idiot Irene, thinking she was providing for her child, but she played right into our hands. As soon as the house deed is ours, you two get divorced immediately. I can't wait to see her face when she finds out the truth. She was ecstatic, but I was even more triumphant. After all her scheming, I was the real winner. Unsurprisingly, I couldn't finish all the food, so I packed it up to take home. Lucas heard the door open and forced himself up from the sofa. He took the receipt and contract from me, examining them closely before finally putting them away with satisfaction, complaining that I was back too late. The paperwork was complicated, took some time. To celebrate, I figured you hadn't eaten, so I brought back a feast for you. I gestured towards the takeout containers on the table, my leftovers. Lucas saw the hotel logo on the bag. While muttering about me wasting money, he started devouring the food. I ignored him. Feeling unusually lighthearted, I took a long bath and went comfortably to my room to sleep. I needed to conserve my energy to fully appreciate the grand drama unfolding later that night. Around midnight, a blood-curdling scream came from the next room, followed by frantic, hurried movements. I could tell they were trying to be quiet, afraid of waking me, but I was wide awake and opened my door. A shocking scene instantly met my eyes. Lucas had hastily thrown on some clothes, his hands covered in blood. Chloe, supported by him, was deathly pale. A thick, metallic smell of blood filled the air, making me want to gag. "9, it's the middle of the night. Why are you two holding each other? What happened?" I feigned confusion. Lucas let out a tiny sigh of relief. I got up to use the bathroom and heard Chloe scream. I opened her door and saw her bleeding heavily. "Irene, stop talking nonsense. I've already called an ambulance. Quick, come help." Even now, he was still lying, trying to cover it up. Chloe was pale as paper from blood loss and had fainted. Clearly, the drugged soup Chloe had consumed earlier had taken its toll. This was karma. I smiled. Instead of lending a hand, I slowly and deliberately locked my own door right in front of Lucas. "Are you still fooling around at a time like this? This is a matter of life and death," he roared at me, furious. My face remained calm, but my words were sharp enough to make his blood run cold. "Even now, you're still trying to treat me like an idiot, Lucas. Do you really think you could hide this forever? You're my husband. Why were you in my best friend's bed? And you made her hemorrhage like this. Do you think you can hide this once you get to the hospital? When did you?" His eyes widened, his expression a mixture of disbelief and palpable fear. "Anyone could see what was happening just now, couldn't they?" I retorted sarcastically. "I wronged you. I couldn't resist temptation. But this is an emergency. Let's get Chloe to the hospital first. We can talk about everything else later." This time, I didn't block his path but readily stepped aside. From his reaction, he probably thought I only knew about the affair, unaware I knew about the baby swap and the house scam. Since he wouldn't give up until faced with the undeniable truth, I would let him experience true despair. The ambulance arrived quickly. Thanks to prompt medical attention, Chloe was out of danger. Outside the hospital room, Lucas covered his face, putting on a show of remorse. "I've wronged you and Pearl. Since there's no love left between us, let's part amicably. You haven't been working long, your financial situation isn't as good as mine. I'll take custody of Pearl. You can visit her anytime. As for the $50,000 debt for the house, since I was in the wrong, you just need to pay back $20,000. The rest..." Before he could finish, I burst out laughing and threw my purse at his face. "Where do you get the nerve to ask me for money? Did you think I didn't know that $50,000 was something you fabricated? That it wasn't a real debt? Ridiculous, let me tell you. Not only will Pearl stay with me, but you will leave this marriage with absolutely nothing." "Irene, don't push it. I've put up with you long enough." Lucas glared at me, his eyes showing both guilt and panic. He couldn't understand how I knew about the 50,000, or rather, his real fear was not knowing just how much of their scheme had been exposed. What's all the shouting? This is a hospital, the patient is awake. Family members, please go pay the bill, the doctor interrupted, emerging from the room. He shot Lucas a look laced with disdain before routinely instructing us to go downstairs and settle the fees. I guess the doctor, being experienced, knew exactly what had caused Chloe's hemorrhage. Seeing Lucas quickly agree and head downstairs, I knew this was the perfect moment to add fuel to the fire. Aiming at his retreating back, I shouted with all my might, "Husband, since you insist on divorcing me, I'll leave my best friend in your care from now on. Make sure you take good care of her health." My words made the doctor stare, first in shock, then with an even more complex, judgmental look towards Lucas. Feeling refreshed and vindicated, I walked into the hospital room. Chloe had just woken up. She stared at me, wanting to speak but hesitant, probably trying to gauge whether I was still clueless or knew everything. I couldn't be bothered with guessing games and got straight to the point. "I know how you ended up in the hospital. Don't worry. Since Lucas and you are so deeply in love, I have no intention of breaking up you two, star-crossed lovers." "Really? Irene, you don't blame me? That's great. I was wondering how to explain. Then I'll tell you too. Actually, Willow is your biological daughter. Pearl is mine." She uttered words of apology, but her eyes held no remorse, only triumph. The narrative feed started buzzing. "Ta time for the big reveal, confetti protagonist. Go slap this green tea bitch hard. I've waited so long for this day." Pausing the story. "Gotta grab some chips." I had waited a long time for this day too. Looking at Chloe, I smiled slowly. "Oh, that, I know. Actually, I secretly swapped the babies back a long time ago." Her smile vanished the instant she heard my words. She stared at me as if she'd seen a ghost, her voice trembling. Are you saying? "Yes," I nodded, ignoring her horrified expression. "The Willow you constantly ignored and belittled is your biological daughter. If you don't believe me, you can get a DNA test. You should be grateful I occasionally fed her something. Otherwise, you'd be looking at a corpse right now." Chloe clutched her head, letting out a heart-wrenching scream, then asked weakly, "The house? Even if I were buying it, it would be in my daughter's name. But sorry to disappoint you, I didn't buy any house. The money is all with me, and it's mine pre-marital assets, you know. I know about every single one of your schemes. Of course, I didn't just sit back and do nothing. Hence, you ending up in the hospital, right?" Her face changed dramatically. She quickly deduced that her and Lucas's uncontrollable urges were because I'd put something in their food. I savored the panic and regret washing over her face, then delivered the final blow. "That soup Lucas's mom brought that day, you actually drank that one too. You should know perfectly well what was in it. The aphrodisiac alone wouldn't have caused the hemorrhage. That bowl of postpartum soup was the real culprit." Chloe couldn't take any more. She fell back onto the bed and fainted. Lucas, having just returned after paying the bill, heard everything. He was first stunned, then erupted in fury, raising his fist to hit me. "Bitch, you schemed against me like this, you deserve to die." I stood my ground, meeting his charge with a flat expression and a sharp command. "If you want to be on the news headlines tomorrow, go ahead and hit me, don't forget. You're already the party at fault in this marriage. Any aggressive action will only add to your list of offenses." Seeing me stand firm and speak so resolutely, his face turned completely ashen. He could only glare at me furiously, his eyes filled with venom. I sneered. "A contested divorce only takes 2 years, max. I can wait. You, on the other hand, will be penniless, and Chloe still owes a huge amount of debt. Good luck to you both." Satisfying lock the scumbag and the bitch together, confetti the end read. Read 2024.12.1. The day I left the hospital, the narrative feed vanished completely. I felt a pang of wistfulness but wasted no time. I immediately filed for a contested divorce with the court, submitting all the evidence. After posting all the secret videos of them online, causing a massive public scandal, I took Pearl and moved to another city. Sky told me what happened later. When Lucas's mother learned Chloe could no longer have children and was also burdened with debt, her previous affection vanished. She constantly berated and abused Chloe, making her life miserable. Chloe, looking haggard despite her young age, also had to endure Lucas's increasingly frequent violent outbursts after he lost his job. Finally, she snapped, stabbed both Lucas and his mother, and ended up in prison. Willow was sent to a welfare home. Later, I heard she was adopted by a couple, both teachers, who couldn't have children of their own. And so, everyone got the ending they deserved.